at me and tell me what you see. I look at you and tell you what I feel. Look at me and tell me what you see. I look at you and tell you what I
Welcome back to something different from the usual this week, as we take a look at Lethal Weapon. However, Lethal Weapon was written by Shane Black, who played this guy in Predator. So there's more of a connection than even I thought there was. So let's take a look at Lethal Weapon, and hope this video doesn't turn into one long Mel Gibson is insane joke. Damn it. The film opens to a rather cheery Christmas song of Jingle Bells Rock, to get you into the mood for a Christmas movie. And then, immediately after, a clearly off-her-face, almost naked woman snorts drugs and then throws herself off her balcony to her death. Merry Christmas? And then, to offset that depressing scene, we move to Lieutenant Murtaugh, played by Danny Glover, in the bath as he's surprised by his kids with a cake, which is altogether a different kind of disturbing image. But Murtaugh is 50 today, giving a justification for his soon-to-be catchphrase of, "I'm too old for this shit." And then, as if to counterbalance this relatively normal morning, we then move to Mel Gibson's Riggs, and because it's an 80s movie, there has to be at least one pale man-ass in the movie, as he gets a healthy breakfast of beer and cigarettes. I know they're trying to get across the dichotomy of Murtaugh and Riggs' characters, but it's feeling a lot like the Odd Couple Police Edition at this point. It's less about showing who these characters are, and more about how different they are. Back to Murtaugh's morning with him having breakfast, and we get our first plot point, as Murtaugh's wife tells him a man named Huntsacker, who's an old Vietnam buddy of Murtaugh's, tried to get in contact with him, which will be important a bit later. Moving on, Murtaugh goes to the crime scene, sending a prostitute home after she's made her witness statement, but there's a twist to this case.
The jumper's name is Amanda Huntsacker. Age 22, prostitute, let's see, one arrest, no convictions, born in Tennessee. Parents.
What was the name?
Huntsacker.
Yeah, the parents.
Oh, parents. Michael and Claire.
Claire.
You know them.
The girl is the daughter of Murtaugh's Vietnam buddy, which makes it more personal for Murtaugh. After the standard police procedure of Murtaugh, we shift to the less than standard operations of Riggs. After all, we're seeing how different they are. Riggs is buying drugs, and tasting before buying, of course, and offers to buy the whole lot with a small confusion over the price.
But the shit's gonna cost you, $100.
What, that much?
Hey, you said you liked it? That's a fair price.
Yeah, hell, you only live once.
Riggs starts counting the bills, and the dealer needs to clarify the price.
96.
Forget it, you dumb shit! $100,000! $100,000!
But then Riggs makes a counteroffer.
Here, now let me say I take the whole stash off your hands for free. And you assholes can go to jail.
Hey,
what do you say
whoa,
about
wait a-
that?
I like how that scene really illustrates Riggs as a character. It tells us that he's street smart, isn't afraid to antagonize, and he likes messing around with people. He's a reckless cop who gets results. But there's one aspect of his character we've yet to see, but we will soon. But for some reason, they think his badge is fake.
Oh, you sure are a crazy son of a bitch.
Is he asking if Riggs is crazy or Gibson? It disturbs me that I have to ask.
You calling me crazy? You think I'm crazy? Yeah, you want to see crazy? I'll tell you.
Wow, turns out Gibson's in a perfect role. Of course, at this point it's hard to say whether Riggs is crazy or just unconventional. But as the shooting starts from a hidden bad guy, Riggs takes them all out pretty quickly, but there's one guy who ran off. And as more cops arrive, Riggs is jumped and held hostage, but he doesn't seem fazed by it.
Drop it, prick!
Hey, shoot him! What? Shoot him! Shoot him! Shut the fuck up!
This is the first moment where we see why Riggs is so seemingly crazy. He's held hostage, and he doesn't just tell the cops to shoot the guy, he goes on to taunt the guy into shooting him, which displays Riggs' suicidal desires, but it's more specific than that, which I'll go into in a later scene. Riggs manages to break free and starts threatening the guy back.
Come on, take it! Get him out of there.
But in my interpretation, he's not angry for being held hostage. He's angry at the crook for not shooting him when he told him to. Which all leads up to the moment back at Riggs' trailer, in a very powerful and honestly well-acted scene of Riggs contemplating suicide, as he loads a single bullet into his gun and tries finding the optimum way to do it. However, ultimately, Riggs can't pull the trigger. So I think Riggs' suicidal tendencies and his reckless behaviour are linked to the degree that he would rather die on the job from some criminal gunning him down, rather than taking his own life. The scene is very well done, not just acting either. It's very brutal to watch, and you feel for Riggs, who up till now we've seen little of. And again, I have to say, great stuff for a Christmas movie. At the station the next day, we see a conversation between the station psychiatrist and one of the officers in charge. She tells him that Riggs is on the edge of suicide, but the guy won't believe her and doesn't believe Riggs, and is basically a massive dick about it too.
We're gonna wait.
We can't
And then if
wait,
he offs himself, then we'll know I was wrong.
You're making a mistake, because if you're wrong...
Excuse me, huh?
Wow, endangering an officer and everyone around him, and just a douchebag thing to say. It's a shame he's not in the film more so I can throw all my hatred at him. Back with Murtaugh, he's given news on the Hunsaker case, and it's now a homicide, as the drug the woman was snorting was poisoned, so she would have died even if she hadn't had a balcony leap. Which is a rather bizarre set of circumstances, and when you think about it, the poison wasn't really needed. But I guess getting someone coked up and just hoping they make that leap isn't a great plan, so greasing the wheels makes sense. While talking, Murtaugh notices Riggs hanging around. He's told that he's got a new partner, which is when Riggs starts inspecting his gun.
Gun!
Wow, kinda jumpy, isn't he? Wouldn't it be normal to see other people with guns in a police station? It's not like Riggs was being threatening at all. Also, I feel like Murtaugh would like to comment on his age.
I'm too old for this shit.
Thought so. However, the feministic interpretation would say that Riggs looking at his gun was a phallocentric gesture, and Murtaugh attacked him as he felt threatened and wished to reassert his masculinity. Wait, who the fuck wrote that bollocks in my script? Murtaugh and Riggs are to work on the case together, and as they go to the car lot, we get more info on Riggs. He was in a special unit in Vietnam, and that he knows martial arts.
I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Really? That's your flimsy justification for the title of this movie? I gotta be honest, if the title of the movie proclaims Riggs as a lethal weapon, that's a really hard position to put a character in. I just hope he lives up to the hype. And I mean lethal weapon to someone other than himself. And with Riggs knowing he's been transferred because no one will work with him...
I don't want to work with you.
Hey, don't.
Ain't got no choice. Looks like we both are fucked.
At least it's the start of a beautiful friendship. Next we meet our big bad crime boss of the movie and his right-hand man Joshua. And this scene is basically to show that the man is using mercenaries in his operation, and as we'll see...
Oh, hey, man.
Mr. Joshua, your left arm, please.
they are ludicrously loyal to the guy. Also, a film with both Mel Gibson and Gary Busey, that's more than enough crazy for one film. Back with Murtaugh, he's talking with Hunsaker and he tells him what happened with his daughter and the murder investigation. And to make the case more personal for Murtaugh, Hunsaker tried contacting him so that he might be able to help get his daughter away from the drugs, prostitution and pornography she was into. And so the responsibility is squarely on Murtaugh's shoulders. Hunsaker says that he owes him for saving his life in Vietnam, all but outright commanding Murtaugh to find and kill the people responsible. Which seems cliché, but there may be an ulterior motive, which I'll mention later. Also, in a similar way to the hyped up character of Riggs, Murtaugh's character has been constantly piling on the burden and responsibility, just making this case more and more personal to him. In a way, it's kind of like the film is telling us about these characters by showing us how they deal with situations. It's a much more organic characterization. And speaking of dealing with situations, our cops respond to a jumper, and Riggs of all people volunteers. Which I'm not sure why, but Murtaugh agrees to let him talk to the guy, when he didn't want him to drive because he was suicidal, but helping a jumper, that's fine. Riggs starts talking with the guy who is pretty adamant on not being talked to, and I know exactly how this is going to go down. Riggs is going to say he knows how he feels and open up to him, so we can find out more about him, and eventually he'll convince the guy that he's...
How'd you leave without me?
Oh no. What are you doing?
Well, okay. That must be a lesser-known psychological technique.
Fuck you! I'm jumping! Do you really want to jump? Do you wanna? Well, then that's fine with me. Come on. Let's do it, asshole. Let's
Wait a
do
minute.
it.
What?
I want to
What
do it.
do you
I
mean?
want to do it.
What do you mean?
They're really playing up the Riggs wants to kill himself angle. We've pretty much had 3 scenes in a row that tell us he's suicidal. They're well done scenes, it's just a bit much. Despite admittedly getting results, Murtaugh is slightly cross.
Get in here!
Okay, maybe a lot cross with Riggs. Murtaugh confronts him and Riggs just tells him how it is, that he's suicidal, even with a bullet specifically for the occasion, and Murtaugh gives him his gun, telling him to just get it done. Riggs does pull the trigger, but Murtaugh stops the hammer, and that's when he's finally convinced that Riggs isn't just trying to get a mental health pension. But it more worries Murtaugh than anything else because he knows that he's in the firing line if Riggs does lose it, which you can understand as Riggs is another responsibility he doesn't want. Murtaugh calls the station psychiatrist to find out just how much crazy he's dealing with her saying a lot. I wonder if Murtaugh has any comment on his age.
I'm too old for this shit.
Ah, I thought so. Our cops go to investigate a lead on the Huntsacker case, a big compound which they're invited into. And without any semblance of trying to downplay the operation, the place has beautiful women sorting cocaine into bags. Then the shooting starts. The guy's down and Murtaugh covers him, but as Riggs pulls the guy up, he pulls out a gun, causing Riggs to shoot him as he falls into the pool. Hold on. Murtaugh was so jumpy that he attacked a police officer with a gun in a police station for no reason. But here, he completely turns his back on a guy who hasn't shown him his hands and didn't surrender. That's not exactly consistent behaviour, you know? Also, when Riggs shot the guy, he fell into the pool, so instead of dying from the gunshot, he'll be suffocated to death because of the pool protector. They jump in trying to save the guy, but he's already dead.
You ever met anybody you didn't kill?
Isn't Murtaugh being quite judgmental there, considering the only person Riggs has killed is someone who was trying to kill him? You think he'd be more grateful, for God's sake?
Sorry about all that shit I said out there. You saved my life. Thank you.
Oh, now I'm the one that looks like the arsehole. That's great. Murtaugh goes home and he even invites Riggs to have dinner with his family. Which, my initial reaction was like, what? You bring a guy home you think is incredibly dangerous and will get you killed, and you're fine with him being near your family? But thinking about it, I think this shows that after Riggs saved Murtaugh's life, he understands him better and actually trusts him. And hey, it's Christmas. The dinner goes well with Murtaugh's daughter taking a rather large interest in Riggs, and there is some good character interaction here. It's all very natural. There's even a bonding moment with Riggs and Murtaugh drinking beer on Murtaugh's boat. This is one of the reasons why the film is hard to talk about, because a lot of the appeal of the film is in the writing and the characters' dialogue playing off each other, which is Shane Black's writing style. So I'll just say this to avoid complaint. The movie's good, and if you want the full experience, go watch it. After everything's quietened down, Murtaugh goes through the mail finding police evidence for the Huntsacker case, which happens to be a pornographic movie featuring the dead woman, also a school yearbook of the same woman, which is just constantly ratcheting up the guilt and personal vendetta in Murtaugh, and you can really see it in his face as he watches. And I'm sure it doesn't help Murtaugh to be woken by a coffee-wielding Riggs desperate to tell him everything he's been thinking about with the case. And after the rather humorous sight of Murtaugh reluctantly getting out of bed, they go to the firing range and discuss the case.
Let's say Dixie put the drain cleaner in her pills.
Say someone paid her to do it.
Sure, she thinks fine. Amanda swallows a couple of downers and she's dead.
Which isn't distracting at all. But they decide to go see the hooker who told the cops about the body, as they suspect she had something to do with it. And you know how I was complaining they were hyping up Riggs' skill without backing it up much? Well, Riggs and Murtaugh have a little competition, first with Murtaugh getting a straight headshot, and then Riggs has a go.
Have a nice day.
I gotta admit, it's a good payoff with a funny and badass moment. After the contest, they go to speak with Dixie, and some kids are there who distract them just long enough to avoid this. Yes, even annoying little kids can save lives. They call for backup, and as everyone goes through the aftermath, they find a dead Dixie, and Riggs recognises the remnants of the bomb used. He knows it was high-end, professional stuff. They speak to one of the kids who saw who planted the bomb, and the kid confirms that the guy was a mercenary with the same military tattoo as Riggs. Which has to be one hell of a coincidence that the two cops in charge of the investigation both have a connection to the people involved. I find it interesting as well that Murtaugh has a connection to the victims, whereas Riggs has a connection to the criminals. It subtly plays up the opposing natures of these two guys. Anyway, Murtaugh knows what's up now and goes to confront Hunsaker, because Murtaugh believes that his daughter died because of him. And after a few pokes and prods, Murtaugh's theory is confirmed and Hunsaker spills the beans. He tells Murtaugh about his military unit during the war, smuggling heroin, and they were using his bank as a cover. He was going to tell the cops, so they killed his daughter. And that's why I said he had an ulterior motive for getting Murtaugh to kill them, because if he kills them, then Hunsaker would save himself from harm and from people knowing what he did. And that's pretty much all of the investigative stuff in this film. The crime drama stuff takes a massive backseat to pure action from now on. Because I'm sure you've noticed the movie's been kind of slow, focusing on characters with very little action. Well, that's because now, when it goes all Die Hard, it's more realistic because we know the capabilities of these people, and we care more about them than if it was a pure action from the start. It's actually really great. So as I said, as soon as Hunsaker finishes what he has to say, the film goes all Die Hard as Gary Busey shows up in a helicopter and guns down Hunsaker, taking out an innocent eggnog in the crossfire. Briggs starts firing back, but the helicopter gets away, and Busey informs the guy in charge that the police know everything, and now they're targeting Murtaugh and Riggs. And because we're full on Die Hard mode now, while Riggs is talking to a hooker about Dixie, Busey appears and guns him down, sending him through a window. Are these even the same criminals? These guys set expert bombs and poison someone completely discreetly, but now they're all guns blazing? Not exactly the actions of a crack mercenary team. And they didn't even kill Riggs, as he was luckily wearing a bulletproof vest. Again, these mercenaries seem to have lost their professionalism in the die-harding up of this film. Which, not to mock Die Hard, it just shows how different these two films are. Because Die Hard starts out as an obvious action film, whereas Lethal Weapon starts out as a crime drama that turns into a crazy action film. Riggs tells Murtaugh that the guy who shot him was the guy from the helicopter, and he says that they can take him out because they have an unexpected upper hand.
Roger, they think I'm dead. I'm a corpse.
Which again says more about our now incompetent bad guys than anything. Murtaugh hears on the radio of a description of a body that's been found, and it's the kid his daughter's been dating, and he rushes off fearing for his daughter. We've been making this case more and more personal for Murtaugh throughout this film, but where can we go from here? Wait, that's right, fuck with his family! Of course! They get to Murtaugh's house knocking the door down with guns drawn, but they're too late as they find a note from Busey telling them they have his daughter. And then they get a call from Busey telling him they have his daughter. I guess the note wasn't enough proof. At the station, Busey calls to ask about the death of Riggs, to which the cop confirms and then gives a smile, so we know there's a plan underway. And back at the house, Riggs and Murtaugh discuss what needs to be done, with the room bathed in red light, so we know these men are out for blood now. And then they get the phone call telling them where to meet the kidnappers. The next day, they drive to the remote location and Riggs is dropped off with a sniper rifle in hand. We're very familiar with his marksmanship skills, so we know he's up to the task. Murtaugh gets to the rendezvous, and then there's a really long and overly dramatic sequence of the bad guys showing up in cars and their helicopter. Which seems a little excessive considering they think Riggs is dead. Once everyone has arrived, negotiations start, with Murtaugh demanding to see his daughter before anything else. She gets out of the car and is unharmed. Murtaugh then makes his offer of a grenade minus the pin. You know, standard police procedure. I'm starting to think Riggs is rubbing off on Murtaugh. Busey gets out and reassures everyone that he's bluffing, but Murtaugh isn't really a guy to be tested right now. However, the plan's not going well as Riggs needs Murtaugh to move out the way to get a shot. Then Busey, because he's a proven badass, or just an idiot, shoots Murtaugh in the arm, causing him to drop the grenade, which explodes. However, it's only a smoke grenade, but it's the cue to start the action as Riggs starts taking out the henchman, allowing Murtaugh's daughter to get away in one of the cars. But before Riggs can take out Busey, he's captured by the guy in charge. Exactly how he found him and managed to sneak up on him completely unheard, I'm not sure. I guess the writers gave him extra competence points. Murtaugh gives up after he realizes he's outgunned, and the helicopter chases his daughter down, and she's recaptured as well. I thought there was a plan in place. That's why this guy smiled. Aren't Murtaugh and Riggs being tracked at all? Shouldn't there be police lying in wait? Apparently not, as they're captured and the torturing begins. Riggs is handcuffed and is being interrogated by Busey and... oh hey, I guess I was right about the filmmakers die-harding up this film. That's the candy-stealing terrorist from the first Die Hard. I guess terrorists like sharing CVs. The guy starts to torture Riggs with a car battery, and elsewhere, Murtaugh is also being tortured with salt to the gunshot wound, and eventually, Riggs looks to have passed out. And this is what the long, slow build-up for half the movie was for. We've seen these guys talk and joke around and be with family members. All that was to give these torture sequences real weight, because they're not just action movie heroes, they're people, so we care about them, and it makes it more difficult to watch because we know they're only human. Of course he's human, but we also know what Riggs is capable of, as he manages to fight back, snapping the torturer's neck in that badass way action movie hero guys do. I know I just said how this isn't your average action movie and it's more realistic, but it does start delving into the ridiculous. Like, for example, the bad guys are about to start torturing Murtaugh's daughter when Riggs bursts into the room and starts snapping necks. He shoots up the place and all the bad guys make a run for it. They start to escape, getting into a club. Why isn't anyone reacting to that? I know there's music, but come on, no one's reacting to that. And they don't seem to care that there are people walking around bloodied and wielding guns.
Hey, what are you...
Oh, okay, they notice after the third guy gets shot. Like a 3 strikes and you're out sort of thing. Everyone starts shooting, with Busey managing to escape by stealing a car and shooting up the place. Ever the consummate professional, that one. Riggs goes after Busey and Murtaugh goes to face off the guy in charge. Riggs chases Busey, firing at him from the overpass, causing the car to catch fire and crash. But even after all that, he walks away completely unharmed, stealing another car and getting away. However, back with Murtaugh, he has more success as the guy in charge tries to run him over. But in a nice callback to the shooting range scene...
No way you live, no way.
Even with a single bullet, Danny Glover, still a badass. And the car then explodes, with everyone on the street getting a nice lungful of aerosolized heroin. Which, I can imagine the streets turning into that bit from Batman Begins where Scarecrow releases the fear gas. Riggs tells Murtaugh that Busey got away, and they both race to Murtaugh's home, because they know that's where Busey's going. And sure enough, he shows up and kills the 2 officers keeping a lookout. Busey gets into the home shooting up the place, but unfortunately for Busey, he finds a note. And then a car. Because the place is empty and it was all part of the plan to let Busey inside. He's caught and held at gunpoint. However, if they wanted Busey in the house, I mean, they set up the note, why did they keep the cops there just for them to get shot? It's not like they were needed, their deaths were completely preventable. Murtaugh pats down Busey, and then in a bizarre turn, Busey and Riggs start fighting as a load of cops show up and then just sit back and watch the fight. Seriously, what the hell is happening right now? Is this Rocky 5? I'm pretty sure cop beats criminal to death while police force watch and cheer isn't really a headline you want, regardless of whether Busey deserves it. This isn't exactly legal. But again, we're in full-on Die Hard mode. So Riggs and Busey go at it in the ultimate crazy versus crazier fight. You decide which is which. And when Busey has Riggs down, Murtaugh wants to help, but Riggs uses his demon voice.
No, please! No! Back up!
Which is kinda scary, I gotta admit. And eventually Riggs gets Busey in a headlock, but decides not to kill him as some form of redemption for Riggs' character. Even though they tried to make Riggs look like a cold-blooded killer, in reality he never actually killed anyone that wasn't going to kill him. So to me, it doesn't really seem like much of a big deal. And as if to prove my point, as Busey is being pulled away by some cops, he grabs a gun, again mirroring an earlier scene. Riggs and Murtaugh both shoot him, which was a completely justifiable kill. The movie ends with some resolutions for Riggs as he goes to his wife's grave to pay his respects, and then goes to Murtaugh's house telling his daughter to give Murtaugh a gift of Riggs' special bullet, as a way of saying he no longer wants to kill himself. Briggs walks away, but Murtaugh comes out and convinces him to spend Christmas dinner with his family, and even the dog joins in as we hear the cat going crazy for some added happy ending slapstick. But it's not an ending until Murtaugh mentions his age.
I'm too old for this.
That's better. Now it's an ending. So that was Lethal Weapon, and it's really, really good. So good, I can't actually do it justice. Seriously, a lot of what makes this film great is the dialogue and the character interaction, which isn't something I can show a whole lot of, but trust me, it's a good film. It's an action movie, but spends enough time with the investigation and character development, so when it does ramp up the action, it's more real, purely because we know the characters and the situation. And it doesn't feel just like mindless action. This is not a dumb movie. It's very clever and very well done. I gotta be honest, this film isn't the usual genre I do, which is exactly why I wanted to do it. Because this show isn't about genres, it's about sequels and franchises of every genre. But next week, we will be back to more of what you're used to. I'm just saying there will be more varied genres from now on. See you next time.